That's it. That's the whole game. Mini Motorways is a minimalistic city planning and traffic management game where the entire objective is to plan ways to get people from their little colored houses to their desired destination. It's a sequel to Mini Metro, which was basically the same thing, but easier to understand and with subway lines rather than roads. And really, there's nothing quite like a game that embraces simplicity as a core tenet, because it's nice to see something simple to pick up, but then you realize, oh shoot, how do I min-max this? It's got a cute aesthetic and a relaxing atmosphere, but this game isn't for the lighthearted. Built like a cruel PC game from the early 90s, you lose control of the situation once, you will watch as everything burns down. It really doesn't help that this isn't really a traffic management game that makes a lot of sense, because having bustling streets with traffic flowing into major routes isn't how this game works. What you think makes sense from a city design perspective yields to a fast death, because the best way to success is to effectively segregate regions into ghettos that only go directly to their destination and nowhere else. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? Every person in this world is colored, their car identifies who they are, they're only allowed to go to specific buildings, there's no point in having multiple roads for people to share if you can just make two roads that are meant for one color separately. You know how the US had water fountains for white people and black people separately because of racial doctrines perpetuated for centuries leading to class disparity? This is basically like that, but with roads. Don't let people share roads, give them their own road they can use. Unfortunately, the lack of 4-lane roads means that every single car that needs to make a turn will block off everything behind them, and the lack of one-way roads means that you can't just make nice exits for cars trying to find their destination. But that's just stuff you would be able to control. This game has sharp claws and it rips you apart after enough time, after watching you panic like a dying animal in its clutches. It's stressful because whenever the game decides to slap a building down or a house, that's it. It's there forever. You have no control over it. If a house ends up being in a place that you can't reach because you don't have enough road tiles or bridges, or if it's too far away, it's only a matter of time before that car fails to reach its destination and you die. So instead of trying to build smart, you decide to build fast, thinking that you can just rebuild smart later, but bam, there's another house in what would have been your way and you can't do anything about it. You're stuck in this terrible system you built out of necessity rather than reason, and you're screwed. There's nothing you can do. Well, you could build motorways, which are basically roads that go from point A to point B over anything else, buildings, water, so on, and they're fast, but they're mostly there to move units across the map or to act as emergency roads. Thing is, even they're not great because the AI isn't exactly the smartest tool in the shed. You can try and build as smart as you want, but the AI doesn't really account in other traffic, only which route is the shortest, and sometimes it ends up being really counterintuitive where they decide to go. So let's say you figure out, hey, maybe there's a better way to reorganize this. The problem is with that, when you delete a road, it only disappears after all the cars went through, which, I mean, makes sense. But this takes necessary seconds that you just don't have right now. But you need this bridge, and it's only Tuesday, and this house just popped out of nowhere, so what are you supposed to do? You're desperately trying to reorganize everything, make sense out of what you have, but the pins are building, cars aren't getting to their destination, maybe a motorway is the only way fast enough to move these cars across the map, and then it suddenly starts dropping buildings on you, and there's not enough roads, and they're in bad spots, so you can't segregate. So that means traffic, which means cars slow down, which means you need a new motorway or a new road, and then you end up getting screwed anyway, because in a different part of the map, the destination was literally unable to service vehicles as fast as they arrived, and they've just stuck in perpetual traffic now. So that's the game. You try and get cars to go to their destination, hope you can figure out what they want fast enough before you eventually end up losing. I'm giving it a final score of leaded gasoline. You're gonna suffocate in traffic because of the game's artificial limit, and there's nothing you can do about it. Just try to plan as best as you can. While Mini Motorways is addictive, it's not the kind that will cause permanent damage in your life because you physically can't stop playing. It's just the kind where you can't really stop thinking about it. I've played it for about twice as long as I thought I would have, and I'm probably gonna give it up after maybe 5 more hours? 10. Okay, 15. I'll give it up eventually when these little cars burn me out, but man, it's gonna be really hard to make new episodes while this is on my mind.